Hi, and welcome to If These Heels Could Talk. I'm JoyGenea with Solutions by JoyGenea.
And I'm Michelle with Bad Cat Digital. And today we have a special guest.
Yes, we do. Awesome, cool special guest.
Tammy Stafford from Jovanovich, JKA and Athman. Tammy is an attorney and did not start her career. She focuses on family law.
Yes,
she didn't start her career that way.
No,
she didn't start her career that way. She's done a ton of different things, worn many hats, tailor, property manager, a stock trader. That's very interesting.
That's how cool she is.
Yeah. Tammy served as a legal assistant for a number of years, and then at the age of 42, went back to school to get her law degree. That's super cool.
That's why we're interviewing
very
her.
brave. Very brave. She's had her own law firm and experienced that. And right now she's a part of a team, a great team of attorneys at Jovanovich, JKA and Athman, and if I said it wrong after a lot of practice, Jovanovich.
You got
so much practice this morning, and I screwed it up anyway. Yeah,
see, I was around so many
of those people.
Right, but I couldn't see the next one. JKA. I was like, somebody say JKA. Like, how do I say the DGE?
So Tammy's practice is supposed to focus mostly on family law.
Yes.
And has a huge passion for domestic abuse survivors. She and I share that passion, which is fabulous. So, Tammy, thank you for coming on If These Heels Could Talk. Welcome. We will start with the best question that we really ever ask anybody, which is, what is your favorite brand or type of shoe?
Louboutins.
Yeah.
I'm curious, do you own just one or two pairs, or?
I'm going to plead the fifth on that.
I think it was maybe the number.
Oh, got it.
I think you should make that a qualified. Yeah, I think that you should make that a qualifiable question instead of quantifiable question. Like, do you own any Louboutins?
JoyGenea, if I told you that my shoes have their own closet,
I love her even more. Oh, that's fabulous. See, that's why she likes our podcast.
That's why she's guesting. So Louboutin red, like that red, I mean, is just like, it's like calibrated to be the sexiest red.
It is. They're smart.
They're smart. I actually think, and I'm not sure, I'd have to look this up, because Target has their Pantone red trademarked.
Really?
You can't, no other commercial use for that red. I think Louboutin might too.
I could see that.
I could totally see that. You'd have to protect that red.
Yeah.
Yeah. And anyway, anybody could paint the bottoms of black shoes red.
When you're not in your
Louboutins.
What else do you enjoy wearing for shoes?
Yeah.
I am a heels girl, and I have the horrible knees to show it. I love a good pair of heels, and when I'm in my heels, I feel like there's nothing I can't do. You know, a good pair of heels and a strong cup of coffee, and I am ready to go.
I love that attitude.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again, Tammy. We're super excited for you to join us. I think we've got a few kind of more discussion questions, and JoyGenea will kick us off with that.
So, Tammy, I'm a little curious. What's kind of new in your industry? What are you kind of seeing shift, change, evolve
in law,
in law, in family law, and in the process of it? I think the process has shifted a bit.
Become much more child focused, and that's not super recent, but so when we're deciding issues of custody, as you probably all know or have heard, back in the day, the courts always used to favor mom. Mom was always the first choice to get custody of the kids. Dad kind of got the weekends if he was lucky. Now, pardon me, we're going away from that, where we're looking at more what is best for the child. And it's not whether it's mom or with dad, who can provide parenting. The courts are really trying to focus on equal parenting time to each parent, if possible. Of course, it's not always possible. So our laws regarding child support and custody they're ever evolving.
Interesting. I'm assuming that shifts your role or job, or how you implement, what you're doing when you're representing clients. That's had to have shifted then, as that
I think it's really important. Everybody comes in with their preconceived notions, right? So no matter what industry you're going into, things that you've heard, things that you've experienced, things that people that you know have experienced something, and they
Movies
all
you've
come in with these preconceived notions. And then of course, there's Google, which is sometimes the bane of my existence.
You and me both, Tammy.
That's funny.
So I make it a priority to educate my clients on, I want to make sure that they know the good, the bad, and the ugly. I think they should be fully informed as to what can happen. Here's what the law says. Here's how I'm seeing your situation. And just really educating them on reality.
Mm. That's really wise of you. I'm sure that's, from your years of experience and just living and doing a variety of things, that's wise of you, because that has to make the rest of your job a lot easier as far as them answering questions and giving you the data that you need to best support them to, to move things along. That's interesting. And
I really think it's important to be sometimes really blunt with my clients. I'm not going to hide the ball. I'm not going to sugarcoat things. I am not Willy Wonka. I want them to know the reality of what could happen. I don't make promises about winning or losing. I avoid that like the plague. But what I think is important to do is just sit down and have a conversation with them. What are your questions? What do you need to know? Here's what I think you need to know. I think that's really, really important.
Mm-hmm.
How do you help clients manage the emotional duration of that process?
That's a really good question.
Because you're talking about something that's super emotional, super charged, and most people just want to yank, like they want that taken care of now. Like that's what I can imagine, the amount of panic attack.
And it doesn't happen that fast.
No, and the court system
moves slowly.
Right. So you've got to be doing a lot of that management of.
I do. I wear a lot of hats, and one of them is kind of a therapist. And I do encourage people to go and see a professional to manage the emotional piece of it, because even in the best of situations, this is a hard process. Divorce is a very hard process, and I think it makes me a better attorney. I've been through this process myself. I had a very amicable divorce, but it was still really tough. It's really akin to grieving a death. It really really is.
Yeah.
So listening to my clients, but yet drawing that line of, if you need to talk through these emotions, this is an emotional process, go do that. It's important. And maybe get your kiddos into therapy too, because kids process things in such a different way than adults do.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing I preach to my clients is whatever you do, do not put your children in the middle. And if I notice you doing that, there's going to be a problem.
That's awesome. See, she's a champion.
Well, because
for the whole wellness.
and I mean that makes sense, because that's what if the courts are getting more child focused and child centered, then that's actually going to work against your clients. If they're putting their kids kind of in the middle of things, or triangulating, to use a therapy term, with their kids, or
alienation.
We've both been divorced. Did you use a family lawyer in your divorce?
Yeah.
Did you use a lawyer? Yeah, I did too. I have very fond memories of my family attorney.
I can honestly, here's the quick synopsis. Gave him paperwork. We drew it up pretty much ourselves. He sat on it for like 4 months. Ex-husband's girlfriend was going to have child in a month, and they wanted to get married. And so I literally moved into his office, like showed up every morning the second it opened, sat in a chair, and he would just be like, hi. And I'm like, anytime, I'm right here. Nothing's going to hold you back from getting this done, right? And he was just like, you're not going to leave. I'm like, no, I've moved in. And he was able to accomplish that within like 3 days.
Wow.
Of me visiting.
Wow.
So
look at you with the visiting.
Well, I didn't know how better to help him
Yeah.
understand the timeline on that. Like, there were things in play that were bigger than me that I thought were important to support.
That's,
I know.
some boundaries.
Yeah.
Okay. So Tammy, so talk to me about, your own practice versus being at JDA is what I'm going to say.
Oh, there we go.
But your own practice versus being like, what were the kind of pros of both? I think, do you had you wanted your own practice right away? Is that why you went to law school? Like, talk to me about that.
We want the journey.
Yeah.
So this is kind of an interesting story, or interesting maybe. So at the time that I got out of law school, there had been a mass layoff by the state of Minnesota for both assistant county attorneys and public defenders. So we had this flood of experienced attorneys out in, right?
That's just like me with the graduating the month after the housing market collapsed.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I had sent out probably between 80 and 100 resumes, and I was not getting any feedback. I had 2 interviews.
Wow.
And I said, you know what? One day a light bulb just kind of came on, and I said, you know what? If no one wants to hire me, I'm going to throw out my own shingle and be your best competition.
Yeah.
That's what I did. And I never regretted it. It was really tough being a solo, because being in the role of support staff, so when I was a legal assistant, is so different from when you have to be responsible for everything.
Right.
I worked for some really, really awesome attorneys. The person that I worked for that really inspired me to go to law school was Virginia Marceau. I credit Ginny with a lot of my decision to go back to school. She was an awesome mentor, one of the smartest people I've ever known. And I thought, you know what, I can do this. So I called her after I had made that decision and said, hey, if I need an ear or a brain to pick, can I call you? And she said, absolutely. So that kind of started that. But, I'm grateful for having to learn a lot of stuff myself the hard way. I didn't have partners to ask. And I think I learned best. By doing. I know I learned best by doing. So I'm not sorry that I had the experience of being a solo. So one day, after being in practice as a solo for, it was either 7 or 8 years, I got a call from a neighboring firm and asked me if I would consider coming to talk to them about joining the firm. It was completely out of the blue. It completely took me by surprise. And I said, well, sure, I guess I would be willing to come and talk to you. So we met 3 or 4 times, and I eventually joined the firm. I owned 2 office suites, and I closed my practice and sold my office suites. That didn't happen until after I joined the firm, but yeah, it was just kind of a whirlwind. But it was the right thing at that time. And then a couple of years later, I had lunch with Lori Athman, who's been a friend of mine for a long time. And we were just talking about, our industry and the challenges. And about a week later, I got a call, and I went and talked to Lori and Sue, and here I am at Jovanovich, Deggy, and Athman. And I love it. It's such a good fit for me. It's an all-female firm, not by choice, just by chance. But all the attorneys, there's 5 of us. So 5 female attorneys. We have 5 female support staff. And it's such a great environment. We really are a team there, and I love that.
Nice.
Wonderful.
How was the emotional ride? I'm a little bit curious from that spot where you're like, well, I could work for somebody else, but what would I be giving up? Like the few times I've thought about maybe it's time to cut back and do things a little bit differently. Because owning your own business, we talk about it all the time. It takes a lot of you. Like it takes a lot of your brain, your body, all of that. And so I'm just kind of a little bit curious about that emotional kind of ride into that.
I think the emotional ride was probably the toughest part of it, because I had put really my heart and soul into building my practice. I started out when I first was licensed. I went to Anna Marie's and I said, hey, I'm trying to build my practice. I would love to serve as a volunteer attorney here. If you need somebody to represent victims in hearings, I would love to do that. And that's really how I started building my practice. And then, you know, everybody that I knew knew I was going to law school, and I just started getting clients. Literally were kind of falling from the sky. I was not doing any advertising, and pretty soon, it was within a couple of months, I had more business than I could handle. The emotional piece of it, once I decided to join a firm, that was tough, because I really put everything I had into that business. But yet it was also a sense of relief, because especially towards the end, I was working 7 days a week. You know, during the week I was lawyering, and then on the weekend.
That's such an active verb. I love that. Lawyering.
I was lawyering. And then on the weekend I was doing my book work. So, you know, one of the things that I had a really hard time with, it's a well-known fact in my industry that more lawyers are either suspended, disciplined, or disbarred for issues with their trust accounts. And if your trust account does not balance to the penny, you're going to have a problem. So that's part of my practice that I was never willing to give up to anyone else. I had seen, I had read about cases where an office manager maybe was embezzling from the account, or somebody else, one of the attorneys.
Yeah.
And I said, I worked so hard to get where I'm at. I'm not giving that up. So part of that was my own doing, working.
I can relate, though.
I can relate to that. The last thing I gave up, the very last thing I gave up was the billing.
Yeah.
The very last thing I gave up. The bookkeeping was always like, fine, whatever, you do that. I spent the money, now you can record it. Like, I don't care about that. You can have your face all up in my financial whatever. But yeah, you go right ahead. But the billing, I was always like, that was always a thing. Always a thing. That's really interesting, Tammy. That's you know, it's so parallel to kind of that entrepreneurial journey, and then the feeling of, you know, with having put so much into something, walking away from it. That's
it's right there. Like,
it's right there.
And solopreneur, you know, as business owners, like I think you're always looking at doors.
You know, it's one of those things. It's like, it depends on the day, right? Like, there are some days that I was like, I couldn't imagine ever being somewhere else, working for someone else, with someone else. I couldn't imagine doing this. And then there's other days. Other days like, oh, throw it all away, give it all.
But, you know, I think the thing, how I looked at it is, I'm really not giving anything up. I am taking my experience and my hard work, and I'm bringing that to another place.
Yeah.
So I think that women need to be okay. Women especially need to be okay with saying, it is okay for me to try to be superwoman and do all this myself. It is okay, because I didn't look at it as what I am giving up. I had to look at it as what I am gaining. Yeah. And what I gained the most was that work-life balance, which was a big thing.
Yeah.
Well, she didn't mention this, but she is a newlywed, and so she needed a little more.
Well, and peers, you know, like I miss, because you know, especially when you start building a team, and you know, you have a team of 10 or 12, you know, I miss going to work and just being a peer.
Yeah.
Right.
Because I can't do that anymore. Like you can't, like when you're leading a team like that, you can't shoot the crap, and you know that there's always a barrier, and you have to keep it there.
I know. That's why we podcast.
That's why we podcast. So we
have each other.
I
know.
Okay, you're next.
And I want to. The next question I'm going to go with is ideal clients. What do you love to do, Tammy? Like, what are the circumstances? What are the cases that you love to do that light you up?
Well, I always have had a special soft spot for my domestic abuse clients. I mean, that's something that is really near and dear to me. That's something I won't ever give up. But my other big soft spot are my adoptions.
She does adoption. I think that's
those are one of my few happy cases, right? So, anytime you have divorce or custody, anything like that, those are very emotionally charged and often very difficult, often very contentious cases. Adoptions are not that. And, when you go into a courtroom and you're finalizing an adoption, the judge is wearing a smile. I'm smiling. My clients are smiling. It's just the whole vibe of the courtroom is different. And that, if I could do that full time, and
I suppose because it's not conflict. Everybody there wants this thing to happen.
It's mutual.
Well, that's not saying that they're always easy.
Right.
I had one adoption go up to the Court of Appeals. There were some very interesting issues, very unique issues, but in the end, when that's done, I have a file on my desktop of my adoption pictures, because I always keep a picture from the hearing. And when I am having a really rotten day, I pull files and I look at those little faces. And I have many of my adoption clients that will just randomly send me pictures of the little ones. And it always seems to happen on a day where I really need it the most. And I can't.
That's really cool.
That does for me.
That's really, really cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Can I I want to go back and talk about the domestic abuse survivors for a second, because as we both know, and anybody who's done any sort of serious work or experienced intimate partner violence, that it's not always physical, and typically it doesn't start physically, and it builds to a physicality in a lot of cases. But it starts with, control and financial abuse and emotional and mental things. And that's been just incredibly difficult to get through any sort of judicial process,
Right.
or be recognized as abuse. So I'm wondering if in the kind of, as we're like seeing mental health differently, as we're seeing these things differently as a culture, are you seeing that follow through for domestic abuse survivors in the court systems?
Unfortunately, our laws right now, address, so in order to get an order for protection, you have to show that there's either been physical harm, a threat of physical harm, something like that. So emotional abuse. So if somebody is calling you really horrible names and just making your life miserable, financial control, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
Those things don't fall under the statutory definition of domestic abuse. And it's really unfortunate because, as you said, Michelle, that's how it starts.
Yeah.
And sometimes I often see that it is never completely built up to the physical piece of it. Luckily, we have added the sexual abuse piece of it. So that can also, back in the 50s and 60s, a man could force his wife to have sex, and that's his wife. He can do that.
Well, that wasn't that. Did you know? I don't know if you probably know this, Tammy. Of course you do. I'm not telling you anything you don't know.
Well, tell me.
But that didn't change. That didn't change in every state until the early 90s.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Which is really sad to me.
That's terrible.
Well, I watched a hearing on TikTok. stupid, crazy, totally a nerd. But I watched a hearing on TikTok where a male lawmaker was like, "Wait a minute, you mean you can rape your wife?"
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And, unfortunately, getting women to talk about that sexual abuse piece of it is probably the most difficult part of my job. And that's where I think it is really important for me to earn her trust and not to force anything, but to just talk through it, let her talk in her own time. And I have such a great respect for these survivors who can go into a hearing and talk about these horrible things that have happened to them to a room full of strangers. Oftentimes we have a male judge. We might have a male bailiff in the courtroom. I mean, a lot of the OFP hearings are still being held remote, which really is a blessing. But when hearings were live, especially, man, hats off to women who can talk about this. It's incredible. And it's one thing, like I said, I'm just so passionate about it. I've been threatened by the abusers after court. I actually I had a death threat that was taken very seriously by law enforcement. They had to come and usher me out of my office. My building went on lockdown and I had to go someplace safe until I found this person.
Wow.
But that's not going to stop me. I've had to get escorts from the deputies out to my car. I mean, but again, that just fuels my fire more.
Yeah. Because that's that person's, that's where they find their power. Exactly. And you can't let them have it.
Exactly.
Yeah, over you. Yeah.
And I always tell my clients, kind of my tagline is, I've got your back. And I mean that in every type of case that I have. I want my clients to know that I've got their back no matter what.
Nice.
So do you have kind of criteria then for picking clients?
I do.
Because I would imagine it's hard to be that passionate if you're not if you don't feel like you can connect with the client. Yeah.
I think it's really important to, and I tell clients this the first time that I meet with them, you and I might not be a good fit. And it's important for you to feel like your attorney is a good fit for you. It's really, really important, because if you don't feel like we are a good fit, this is not going to go well. And I've had to tell people, I don't think we're a good fit.
Sure.
I've turned down many cases where I see some huge red flags. And that's the one thing that I learned early on. Listen to my gut.
Yes.
Oh, there's our brilliant.
So I have like the same, it's the same client red flags over and over and over again. They're not ready for this. This is a stretch for their budget, or this is this, or this is this, or this is just not going to go the way that they want it to go, no matter what we do. I'm very familiar with, and then the strength it takes to walk away, especially when you were working on your own. Yeah. That's because you say yes to everything when you're starting.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's how we learn the
gut feeling.
Because you said yes to everything and went, oh, this didn't work.
Yeah, this was a terrible idea.
Like, and I knew it at the beginning. You remember back when your gut was like, maybe not. And you're like, sure. Yeah.
So is this the thing you wish you had known sooner in life?
It really
or is there something else?
No, I think that's one of the big things I wish I'd learned earlier in life. And it's not just with my practice, right? It's every piece of life. We have this built-in intuition, but I think and that starts off when we're kids. Kids are really intuitive, but we kind of talk them out of it, which is really unfortunate. So we're told then, well, don't be too hasty. But I've learned to just really listen to my gut. And that is one thing I wish I would have known early on. I always tell people now, you can't fool me. I've raised teenagers. It's true. I think I have a pretty good read on people. And when something in my head or my gut is pinging when I'm meeting with somebody, I have learned to listen to that. And it's important, because when I don't listen to it, I always, and this is a case that I can say always, I always regret it.
Yeah. Yes. Especially when I don't listen for something really dumb, like social pressure, or like, well, I didn't want to be rude, right?
Yeah.
Like that's
The
the dumbest reason. Yeah. And I'm after I hit 40, I'm like, I'd much rather be rude.
Yes.
I'd much rather be rude than regret the action or inaction.
Yes. Tammy, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you,
today.
ladies. This
has
awesome.
been awesome.
Yeah.
We wish you all the best in the coming court season. I know you're
the court season.
Well, it has
is it like basketball season? No, but it is. I do like looking at things. I think family law starts to really kick off in January. So good luck.
Everybody, you are right.
Yes, everybody gets through the holidays.
And then they're like, okay, we faked through that. Now we're done. So,
Right?
Yeah, you're gonna have to ask what the elf on the shelf is doing to each other. I watched a video of this little kid who had like holes in the backs of his pajamas that just went. He was in like the elf on the and his mom was because the mom, of course, did this to him and cut holes in his pajamas and then put the scissors next to the elf.
Oh,
right.
Funny.
So he had these holes in the back of his pajamas and he just burst into tears. This poor woman.
Oh, I tell you.
Like, and you could tell they were old pajamas that he was like outgrowing, like
mom was just like, these are headed out anyway.
But they must have been his favorites or something, and she didn't know. Oh my gosh.
She learned.
Yeah, she learned. She learned.
She didn't listen to her gut.
There you go.
Or his gut.
Yeah, she will know.
Well, thank you so much, Tammy.
Thank you, ladies.
And that's been our episode of If These Heels Can Talk. Thank you so much. We hope you've heard something that's been inspiring, and you go back to school and get your JD.